Okay, Cleveland, time to get this rolling. The 2021 NFL Draft is now officially open.
You ready to roll?
Steve, we're going to kill everyone.
Trevor Lawrence, quarterback, Clemson. Kyle Pitts, Quiddy Pay.
I've been preparing for this moment for years.
Every day we're going to come in and give our best, and we ready.
Wow, it is,
there it is.
Mac Jones.
Wow! Let's go!
Michael Parsons! Woo!
You're going to get someone who's going to get their all for this team. Let's get it.
And we welcome you to Draft Today Draft Grades presented by Verizon. And we'll start out with a big thank you to you, the football consuming public, for a record year when it comes to viewership in the NFL Draft. I say it all the time. The NFL is not just the most popular sport in America. It is the most popular form of entertainment in America. And certainly the consumption of the NFL Draft is a testament to that. To my immediate left, a man who was a second-round pick back in the day out of North Carolina of the Buffalo Bills. Of course, a scout as well for the Seahawks and the Panthers. Bucky Brooks, also one half of the most popular draft podcast in all the land, Move the Sticks. Bucky, I'll start by asking you just kind of how maybe the draft differed from what you and DJ had been talking about for the last few months on Move the Sticks all these months.
Look, it was very volatile in terms of just the differences in terms of the grades that guys carried from team to team. And I think that played out in the draft process without kind of that group think tank that you would get at Combine and really pro days. You had a bunch of different variances. And so the Snowflake draft board came to fruition this year. Everybody was graded differently, and you saw guys go off the board much sooner than many of us anticipated based on how we view players.
And then just beyond Bucky's left, Lance Zierlein, who, of course, has been doing this for decades now as a draft analyst. He is the author of all of the bios that you will read. And then basically, I don't know if you would plagiarize them because you won't write them down, but you'll take his content, repurpose it, and make it your own when you're talking to your friends so you sound good when it comes to the NFL draft. I'll ask you this, Lance, with opt-outs and with so many kids going back, for 2022 or 2021, 2022, how did that change your work this year from previous drafts?
It was the most challenging process I had, and I know the same thing can be said for the NFL teams that were out there. I had to spend so much more time on 2019 tape, which means many more projections were necessary. And when you think about it, Money, who you were in 2019 as a 20-year-old may be way different than who you would have been in 2020 as a 21-year-old, and yet we didn't have that tape. So you had to spend a lot more time on whatever tape you had in 20, and then if there were an opt-out, you had to go rely on 2019, and then you had guys like, Caleb Farley and Gregory Rousseau who were switching positions recently, and so, it's ultra projections for those guys.
All right, let's get to it. They have turned in their blue composition books. Bucky and Lance are grading them. Buck, you're going to take the NFC, Lance the AFC. So, Bucky, get us started on the NFC and your grades. Let's start with the Cowboys, that B you gave them there.
The America's team. America's team ended up getting a B because I felt like they did a really good job of getting good players. Now, there's some decisions that people will question when it comes to, like, third round or lower. But the first couple picks, look, they nailed it. Michael Parsons, being able to move back and get him, I thought he was the best defender in the draft, gives them a difference maker and impact player at that level. They come back later and get Jabril Cox to add that, so maybe that's the new linebacker duo that we'll see going forward. They also addressed the cornerback need by getting Kelvin Joseph coming out of Kentucky. Big-time playmaker, tremendous athlete. He has all the upside in the world. And when you think about being able to nail it on those first two picks, I think the Cowboys certainly hit it out of the park in that area.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty salty draft by the Dallas Cowboys from a talent standpoint. There's no doubt about it. Love Micah Parsons' ability. Kelvin Joseph, there's a question about some character there from him, and there's a question about Josh Ball on some character there from Marshall, the offensive tackle. Both those guys are starting quality. So they got a bunch of really high-end quality talent guys in this draft. And I think the one guy that stands out for me, obviously, as Bucky mentioned, Micah Parsons. He's just on a different level.
And I'll just point out, look, this was not just a bad defense in 2020, but it was historically bad. And their first 6 picks were used on defensive players, and they selected 8 defensive players overall. Let's shift from the Cowboys to the Eagles' trade partners. Who would have guessed that could happen? But I guess needs make for strange bedfellows, Bucky. It looks like you gave the Eagles a B as well.
Yeah, look, solid draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. And it started, they needed a playmaker. And they're one of the teams that continue the trend of taking a college quarterback and pairing him with his favorite receiver from his collegiate days. So they go and get Devontae Smith, they go with Jalen Hurts. And so you like to think that this duo has an instant chemistry and connection. Maybe they bring in Jalen Reagor, they all get going, and they can get this passing game up and going. But then they come back and get Landon Dickerson, who is the best pivot in the draft. Physical, rugged, a guy who really does an excellent job of not only controlling things, but moving bodies off the line of scrimmage. We know that Kelsey won't play forever, so they already have a replacement that can come in and step in and replace those big shoes.
Yeah, and something I want to point out as well that Howie Roseman did here, I don't know that you're going to find 3 picks in the first 3 that have higher football character really in any draft than the guys that Bucky just talked about. Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, and then a guy who's really popped over the draft process, Milton Williams. He was a guy who was, on the day that he put together one of the greatest pro days of all time for a defensive lineman, he was taking a test for his online schooling that he was doing at Louisiana Tech. So, I mean, these guys care a lot about football, and I think that's something that needs to be said as well. All talented, but, I mean, they care a lot about ball.
Yeah, and I think also, just kind of a takeaway, you get Zach Ertz back if he's healthy, plus Goddard, Reagor, their first-round pick last year. You add Devontae Smith, Dickerson, as you mentioned, who might play guard until he takes over for Kelsey at center. They'll know what they have in Jalen Hurts. Give your quarterback weapons so you can take some inventory and figure out if you got to get back into the quarterback business next year. All right, Lance, let's take it to the AFC East and get a look at your grades for those 4 teams. A+ for the Dolphins. We'll get to that in a moment, but start us out at the top with the Patriots there on that B.
The Patriot Way. Let's see what the Patriot Way looked like. I think when you look at the Patriots and what they did, they let the draft come to them. I gave it a solid B based on up and down the draft. But Mac Jones was a solid number 15 selection. He fits that Patriot Way. He's a very good processor. He throws with good accuracy. I think it would have been a ton of pressure to move him all the way up the draft to 3 or even 4. Right here at 15 with this team, I think this is a really good spot for Mac Jones. And I like it there. And then Christian Barmore, the defensive tackle from Alabama, falling into the second round. I think he had legitimate first-round tape without question. And to get him where they did, I think is a big steal for the Patriots. I gave him a solid B. I like what they did up and down. Ronnie Perkins, I'm so on, but he fits the Patriots mode as a tough physical guy on the edge.
Yeah, no, it's funny, Lance, because the New England Patriots said that they wanted to do things differently this draft. And it looked like it was a lot more of the same. They kind of stayed and took good players that kind of failed to them. Mac Jones would be an interesting pick down the line. He's kind of in that mode of the traditional pocket passer. We've seen them have success with that, obviously, with Tom Brady. But other guys have come in there and have been able to be successful, Brian Hoyer and others. And so we will see how long does it take for him to take the QB1 job from Cam Newton if he's able to do it in 2021.
Yeah, and I just, point out a lot of times people forget that free agency and the draft, it's one hand washing the other, shaking the other, however you want to describe it. And my gosh, they did so much work in free agency that, like you said, Bucky and Lance, they were able to do what the Patriots do, right? And just take those picks that maybe fall to them in the case of Barmore or Ronnie Perkins, who, obviously, Buck, your partner DJ likes him an awful lot. So to get him all the way down in the third round, a big coup for the Patriots there. All right, let's go to that A+, Lance. The Dolphins with an A+.
And Chris Greer is killing it. This is becoming one of my favorite executives in the entire league because he understands how to get up and down the draft, and he did it again here. And look, I like that they had 2 first-round picks after finessing the draft earlier, as we all know, with San Francisco. But they shot for the home run. I mean, they're swinging for the fences with Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips. Jalen Waddle is a player who I just think is unguardable over all 3 levels of the field, and that's a big home run threat that Tua needs, and he's familiar with. Jalen Phillips, we know, can rush the passer. But, another guy that I think is interesting is Javon Holland as well. And Javon Holland in that second round, keep this in mind. He's not only a safety, he's also a guy that fits, I think, really well at nickel corner. And it goes back to something they tried to do a few years ago with Minkah Fitzpatrick, the same type of player, maybe not the same, exact quality of player, but I don't think he's that far off. And Minkah gave him that same look. So they went back and said, hey, we still want to look for this kind of guy. And that's what they got in Javon Holland.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the Dolphins being a team on the rise. they've done an excellent job of just landing blue chip players. These guys not only have the prototype dimensions that you want, but they also are really, really good productive players. And so it gives them a chance. I like what they're putting together down in Miami. They were close a year ago. This might be the year they get over the top because these new guys, this new class, should push them over the top.
And I'll just button it with, again, like I said about Jalen Hurts, you're going to know what you got in Tua. You get him Waddle, you get him a full-service tight end, Hunter Long. You add the tackle in Eichenberg after Jackson last year. He's got everything he's going to need now, especially with the free agency addition of Will Fuller to get after it offensively. All right, couple down there, the AFC and NFC East. When we return, we'll flip coasts. We'll go to the West. NFC and AFC West grades are next on Draft Today Draft Grades presented by Verizon.
With the third pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Trey Lance, quarterback, North Dakota State.
And it is the Bison, Trey Lance.
Trey Lance has not lost a football game since he was in high school in 2017.
Tears in his eyes as the quarterback of the future of the San Francisco 49ers.
So here on Draft Today, Draft Grades presented by Verizon, we go from the sunrise to the sunset. Bucky, let's get to the West and your NFC West grades. We start with the 49ers and that B that you have slotted.
Yeah, no, a very solid draft for the San Francisco 49ers. They kept us in suspense for the entire process. We were speculating on which quarterback they were going to get, and finally they settled on Trey Lance, who I think is a great fit for what they want to do. This is a guy at North Dakota State that managed a pro-style offense that also had plenty of college elements in terms of RPOs and quarterback run game and those things. And so when you imagine him playing in this offense with Kyle Shanahan, it should be a marriage or a match made in heaven. I believe this gives the 49ers an opportunity to add another dimension to an offense that is already pretty scary. And then when you go back a little later, they get Trey Sermon. The 49ers have always been able to identify running backs that are perfect fits. He's a one-cut runner who is physical. He has soft hands in the passing game. Big-time pick. And so those two picks alone give them opportunity, but they also got some other good players that should help them right away.
Yeah, I agree with everything Bucky said. It's the advantage of having a well-defined scheme with Kyle Shanahan. And, you know, when you think about Trey Sermon, I don't know if Trey Sermon's going to be a hit or not, but I know this. Kyle Shanahan understands how to find running backs who make a a big deal, in terms of the running game and being able to elevate. So that stick and go is important. But getting to Trey Lance for just 1 second, he is the perfect embodiment of all the different traits that work for a Kyle Shanahan offense, only I think with an elevated opportunity to be more than anything Shanahan's ever had at that quarterback position. It's a projection, but I think it's potential there with Trey Lance.
Yeah, I would just say projection's the word, right? Because this is either going to be an A or an F. You trade 3 ones for Trey Lance. If he's it's an A+++. If he ain't, with all them quarterbacks, it's an F-. All right, Bucky, let's go to the Cardinals. You got 3 C's in the division outside of that B, and Cardinals got one of them.
Yeah, the Cardinals got one. I gave him a C+, and it's not necessarily that I don't like the players, because I think Zaven Collins has an opportunity to be a baller in their system. You get a chance to put him alongside maybe Isaiah Simmons and do some creative things with those 2 guys, kind of playing those hybrid linebacker types. They are a team that loves the blitz, so I would think that Collins and Simmons would be heavily involved in that. But outside of that, I still have a little bit of mystery in terms of how they're going to utilize their personnel. When I look at Rondale Moore, who's a fantastic athlete, and in the one season that he was able to play fully for Purdue, he put big numbers up. But man, you talk about a guy who's been off injured, who we haven't seen for maybe the last couple years. We can fantasize and romanticize the athleticism, but is he going to be able to put it in play on the grass? I just need to see. So for me, they get a C+, a little bit above average when it comes to the selection in the Hall.
Yeah, I think pretty fair grade, to be honest with you. Zaven Collins, to me, you have to plug him in because you're not sure on Isaiah Simmons still at the linebacker spot. And with Rondale Moore, you've got 3 small wide receivers there working the slot, and we'll see. But to your point, Bucky, his best year was in 2018, his freshman year, and he averaged 7.7 yards a catch this year. So, yeah, the testing was great. But in terms of the overall production and the arc of the production, I mean, second feels a little bit rich for Moore.
I like the fact they're willing to move on. Too many teams hold on to picks, right? Because they're worried about, admitting mistake. They moved on from Josh Rosen, got Kyler Murray. They traded up to get Andy Isabella. Appears he ain't it, so they get Rondale Moore. I mean, that you got to keep swinging. If it ain't happening, don't try to make it happen. And it seems like Keim and that staff are willing to do that. Let's shift to the AFC and the AFC West. Lance, here are your grades. 2. Man, I got to get into a class with Lance as the teacher, not Bucky, because, man, we got A+ all over the place here.
Bucky's just
A+,
man,
I'm
the class you get into your senior year. I'm the class you want, Money. I'm trying to make it easy on you your senior year. So let's start with the Chargers. I gave them the A+, and one of the reasons I gave the Chargers an A+ is because in this draft, not only did they get some impact starters at the top end, I think they got a draft filled with players who are going to make the team, frankly, and that's what it's about, including on the back end some special teams guys. But let's start with the dogs up front, and that's Rashawn Slater. Can play guard, center, tackle as a 5-position offensive lineman, and I think he immediately upgrades the pass protection for Justin Herbert, and that was the #1 priority for that team. And then when you go beyond that, Chris Rumph is a guy that I know Bucky and I both really like a lot, the defensive end out of Duke. He's got a father who is a defensive end and a defensive line coach in the NFL. And Rumph, for me, as much as he's long and agile and has some trouble in terms of his playing strength, he's always in the pocket, just always there, fighting back after contact. And I think his game really is going to work well for the Chargers as a designated pass rusher. It may take a year or 2, but I love his upside and potential where they got him.
I think the Chargers did a fantastic job. We always talk about the building around your quarterback. Well, the main thing you got to do is make sure he's protected. Rashawn Slater gives him a bodyguard. Make sure he's protected, he's upright, because when Justin Herbert has time, he can make it happen. And then on the other side, Asante Samuel Jr. is an absolute baller. And I love the fact that Brandon Staley gets a guy that he can put in a situation where he can play with his eyes and make plays. We saw what happened last year with the LA Rams when they put him in that scheme. I now think that you put Asante Samuel on the outside in LA with the Chargers, man, he could be a Pro Bowl player in a couple of years.
And I'll just quickly add, I know they're really excited about Josh Palmer and his, coming into a wide receiver room with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and just the traits he's already shown, being able to learn from those guys. I think you'll probably see him getting a lot of snaps and a lot of action out on the field in his rookie season. Let's go to, we're a harsh grader in some cases, and it would be that C+ for the Raiders, Lance.
Yeah, and look, I have Leatherwood graded differently than Mike Mayock and John Gruden did. I think there's some issues in terms of his pass protection right now. And when you're talking about a first-round tackle, pass protection needs to be at the top of the list. I mean, I do think he's going to help the running game, and I know Mike Mayock has mentioned that. But I think you got to be able to pass protect, and that is a little bit of a weakness right now. The hand usage and just the overall technique. I know Tom Cable's a guy who can get it coached up, so obviously that's a really big deal. And then Trevon Moehrig, I do like that pick a lot in the second round. I think Moehrig is a guy that really allows you to have Jonathan Abrams be able to move forward and play down near the box, and he's a good, as Bucky mentions, the old, what do you call it, Bucky, on the top of the Christmas tree? You got the ornament on top of the tree. Yeah. I think that's a really good analogy for this one.
Look, when I think about the Raiders, this is John Gruden always trying to go back to his past. What he wants to do with the offensive line, he wants to have the biggest offensive line possible. He wants to mash at the line of scrimmage. He wants to run the football and dictate the terms to the defense. When I think about their defense with Gus Bradley wants to play the cover 3 scheme. He wants to make sure that he has someone that can hang over the top, make sure they can be a natural center fielder, so it allows them to put Jonathan Abrams in the box and see if they can play. So we'll see. A little undecisive because I like the Moehrig pick. I'm undecided. I'm not in love with the Leatherwood pick, but at the end of the day, if he plays well, if they form that collective front five, maybe we'll come back and change our grades. Maybe they can get a little extra credit when it's all said and done.
Yeah, third reach in their third consecutive draft. To see if this one finally pays off following Arnett and Furl. Let's do pro comparisons. Lance, stay in the AFC West. That's presented by Lowe's. We go to the Chiefs and their second-round pick, Nick Bolton. What do you make there?
Yeah, I like Nick Bolton. He's a physical, tough guy in the middle. He's a thumper. He's all about business downhill. He's got excellent instincts. You always see him, run and then run into the alley when the play flows wide. The guy he reminds me of, though, a lot is Denzel Perryman. When I watched Denzel Perryman when he came out of Miami, he was the same kind of thumper, very physical in between the tackles. Both of them have some limitations. I think when the ball flows wide, I think both of them have some limitations in coverage. But I think it's a pretty good comparison in terms of the way they play. And in Nick Bolton, I do want to mention, I think he gives the Chiefs a certain level of toughness in between those tackles that they're looking for up the middle.
All right, that was Pro Comparisons presented by Lowe's. We have now covered the West. We will move south when we return, the AFC and NFC South, and we get started with the number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence, and how the Jags did. We'll get you grades when we return here on Draft Today Draft Grades presented by Verizon.
Hello?
Trevor,
What's up, Coach?
how you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm anxious.
Well, we're about to make you the first overall pick in Jaguar football history. Congratulations to you, Marissa, and your family.
Thank you, Coach. I'm pumped. Let's go.
Hey, Trevor, congratulations. We're so pumped to it.
Hey, I'm just as excited. I'm excited to get down there, and man, the whole family's here, so it's awesome.
All right, here you go. AFC South grades. We start with Lance in the AFC, and well, there it is. The Jags got an A. No surprise. You get Trevor Lawrence, a transcendent quarterback. That's a pretty easy way to grade, I assume, there, Lance.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy way to grade. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be similar to John Elway in terms of his impact on a franchise for a long, long time. And, that was an easy one. But the one that I thought was a little tougher was in the right move was going with Travis Etienne because, this is a guy who Trevor Lawrence has been to battle with. And when Trevor Lawrence is going to try to be the face of a franchise, you want someone who you can rely on and someone who's dependable, tough. He's a 3-down player with amazing contact balance, as you'll see here. And it's a guy who went back to school this year to try to accomplish some goals along with the rest of his team. And that type of team-first mentality is something Urban Meyer has to love. So I think this is a really good draft for the Jaguars. They did what they were supposed to, and I love Etienne there at the back end of the first.
Money and Lance, I know you guys are big investors, and I think Urban Meyer and Trent Baalke subscribe to the Warren Buffett philosophy. All brand name guys, big time talents. 8 of their 9 guys came from Power 5 schools, and all 9 were drafted above the FBS level. They didn't mess around and try and find hidden gems. They got blue chip players from premier programs because that's what Urban Meyer knows, being a recruiter who's used to having 4 and 5 stars on his roster.
Lance, you're in Houston. I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get to your grade on the Texans that I'm sure will make some waves down there in a somewhat great.
Yeah, they're not going to like it, but it is what it is. I give the Texans a C-. It's my worst grade. Well, I hate to be a spoiler on the rest of the show, but this is about as bad as it gets to me. And look, I don't think it's terrible. I just think the problem is Davis Mills with the selection there. With all the needs that you have, you didn't come out with a cornerback at the entire draft. And Mills is a guy with 11 games and 2 major injuries that I just question why take him in the 3rd right there when it's questionable whether or not he's even going to be your future starter. That's not the spot for a guy who's going to compete for a job at some point. I just don't see that. And then, of course, with the rest of their draft, I like Nico Collins a lot. I thought Nico Collins was a fantastic selection for their offense and fit a need. But Nick Caserio had to use 2 trade-ups in that round to get Collins. And I think when it's all said and done, he'll look back. I think Caserio could end up being a very good GM for the Texans. But when it's said and done, I think he's going to look back at this draft and say, you know what? My first draft alone was probably one I'd like to have some of those moves back. And that might end up being the case on this draft.
Hey, Lance, and you're one of the most generous graders out there because you really believe in pass-fail. And what you did, you just gave them the collective thumbs down. Look, I don't understand the Davis Mills thing at 3rd. I like Davis Mills, but Davis Mills is not necessarily a suitable replacement for Deshaun Watson if they have to move on. And I don't really see him competing with Tyrod Taylor. We'll see. Maybe it turns out to be that Davis Mills is the next version of Tom Brady that comes from a later round selection and emerges as a big-time starter. But I don't know. And then they didn't really address the rest of their needs. But we'll see. Maybe they got a bigger plan in place that takes place after the draft.
All right, Bucky, let's get to the NFC South. Get a look at your grades here for those 4 franchises. Few B's and a C for the Saints. Why don't we start with a B- there? The Falcons had that number 4 overall pick, and a lot of people pointed to them as the pivot point of that first round based on what they were going to do. Heir apparent to Matt Ryan or go with the best player on the board.
Yeah, and this is a tough one, right? Because you have to make the decision between the heir apparent or the big-time playmaker. They went with the playmaker in Kyle Pitts, and it all depends on how Matt Ryan plays. Kyle Pitts should be a monster over the middle of the field. You surround him with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, you should be able to get it done. But then it goes beyond that. They're going to get Richie Grant, a nice safety from Central Florida, a guy who has a knack for getting his hands on the ball, should help that defense. This defense needs to get more takeaways. And then the final thing that really stood out to me, Jalen Mayfield, offensive tackle from Michigan. They need to be a little more blue collar, a little more rugged. Let's see how Arthur Smith remakes this offense and this team in his own image.
I think one of the players that Bucky didn't mention that I like a lot is Drew Dahlman, center out of Stanford. His father played in the NFL.
Yeah.
This guy is just a rock-solid technician. He's got good strength. He's a little bit undersized, but fits perfectly in a lot of zone scheme stuff. I think he's going to be a long-time center in the NFL, long-time starter for the Falcons. I think that was an under-the-radar fourth-round selection.
Yeah, I'm excited, man, to see Pitts. If they keep Julio and Calvin Ridley on the field at the same time, my goodness, what an absolute nightmare for defensive coordinators. Let's go to the Panthers. They ended up taking that corner in the first round. Some people thought it might be quarterback. Bucky.
Yeah, now this is one of those. Scott Fitterer, Matt Rule decided to take the best player available. In their mind, it was J.C. Horn. What I will say, he might be the most explosive defensive player on the board at the time. He is a terrific man-to-man cover, very feisty and aggressive, tenacious in terms of the way that he plays on the perimeter. He has a chance to be a premier corner in this league, but it goes beyond that. Terrace Marshall, big receiver, reconnects with Joe Brady. Joe Brady will know how to position him and put him in a situation to make plays. He becomes the immediate number 3. And then how about Matt Rule's wife stepping in and maybe suggesting maybe Chuba Hubbard needs to be the pick if Matt Rule wants to come back home later that day. And so it's a very solid draft for the Carolina Panthers. Can't wait to see how it plays out on the field.
Well, happy wife, happy life, but you better make sure you get that right if you're going to be firing a fourth rounder on Chuba. So I love Deontay Brown, 6th round. Shout out to another big guy. I think Matt Rule may have found a starting guard in Deontay Brown all the way back in the 6th round. I want to point out something that I thought was interesting. Some of my most enjoyable tape to watch was Kyle Pitts versus J.C. Horn. And here, just after Pitts selected 4th by a division rival in Atlanta, here come the Carolina Panthers, adding a cornerback who I thought did a nice job when they were physically matched up on each other in their matchups in the SEC, and J.C. Horn. So just something to keep an eye on. He's that kind of player that he could potentially match up with the Kyle Pitts in selection at number 8.
I'll just quickly add, Sam Darnold grew up about 20 miles south of where I live, and I heard he gave the draft an A+++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++ with that number 8 overall selection. All right, that is the South. When we return, we go north. The NFC and AFC North grades are in. Bucky and Lance going to get into it. It's Draft Today. Draft Grades presented by Verizon.
Justin Fields, quarterback, The Ohio State University.
I'm very confident in my game.
Talent is off the charts.
Going deep here, Fields. Back in the end zone. What a throw.
Can he escape? Yes.
That's a touchdown for Justin Fields.
Fields launches downfield. He's got a touchdown.
Back in the end zone, touchdown.
He's a 5-star playmaker.
Great throw with great accuracy.
Fields has room to run.
Fields, touchdown.
This kid's a beast.
Justin Fields, absolute stud.
All right, back here on Draft Today Draft Grades presented by Verizon. Bucky, here is your NFC North board. We got 3 A's and a C+, right? Bucky likes the North division. Let's get started with those Bears and that A- in Justin Fields.
Oh, the Bears. After being so hard on the Bears for years, I have to commend Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace for moving up and getting Justin Fields. They have needed a franchise quarterback in Chicago since Jim McMahon. I think they may finally have one. And what I like about Justin Fields is not the athleticism and the arm talent, but the fact that he played in cold weather conditions at Ohio State. He certainly understands how to cut the wind and do it, and he's a 5-star playmaker. I think this is going to be great for them. But it's beyond that. Because the Bears also, if you're going to be the Bears and be a hard-nosed team, you got to get someone who is rugged. Tevin Jenkins, offensive lineman, offensive tackle from Oklahoma State. He kind of fits the bill. Physical, aggressive, nasty. The Bears need to be the Bears to win this division. That means a blue-collar team that's rugged. I think they've kind of found their identity. Let's see what Matt Nagy's able to do with all the pieces that he now has.
Yeah, I really like the Fields selection also. I mean, the Bears, they swing from their heels all the time. Some of the moves, the Khalil Mack move, obviously. And this one with Justin Fields, I mean, it's just look, they got to do it. They really don't have a lot of choices here. They got to try to find a guy who can help them win. Time's running out on the GM and the head coach. This may buy them a little extra time, but more importantly, they have found themselves a quarterback.
I could take the rest of the show and name quarterbacks that they have tried to win with. Caleb Haney, Jonathan Quinn, Chad Hutchinson. Remember they traded a first for Rick Meyer, who played 3 games. I'm going to keep going because I can. I mean, Rex Grossman, first rounder. Obviously, Mitch Trubisky. Steve Stenstrom. There you go. I could throw that. All right, Packers. Let's move to the Packers, Bucky, because I can keep going. But let's focus on what Green Bay did.
Yeah, the Packers may be a little disappointed, but they might have been a little distracted. Aaron Rodgers decided to passive-aggressively drop a bomb on the eve of the draft, and maybe that detracted from their focus because they came away with a corner in the first round, and everyone was screaming for a playmaker. I would say that they don't do that on offense, but Stokes gives them a corner on the outside. However, I worry a little bit about the ball skills and how he competes on the outside against those big-time players. And then it's about trying to replace Corey Lindsey at center. They get Josh Myers from Ohio State. Solid player, but man, big shoes to fill. Overall, I thought they did okay. Want to see the Packers do better because you want to see this team find a way to get over the top because they've been to the championship game in back-to-back years.
Yeah, I think the last player we have right there on the tape is the guy that makes the most sense in that whole draft, Amari Rodgers. You finally get someone, look, you got some big guys on the outside who can get down the field or some guys who are ball winners, but you need someone who can just get open from the slot. I think they finally have one of those guys in Amari Rodgers.
Shane Matthews, Cordell Stewart.
Those are all – we're off the Bears money. We're off.
To the AFC North and Lance's grades. You see, we got the A for the Steelers and a trio of Bs. Let's start in Pittsburgh and why you gave them an A-, Lance.
Yeah, buddy, we got a bunch of Steelers on the Steelers now. Najee, let's start right off with Najee Harris. They said they wanted to fix the running game, and I think if you can't find the offensive lineman you want, how about a guy who can create for himself with a little bit of subtle wiggle, great vision, and very good power. He can run through contact. And Najee Harris is just a downhill back. He's got a little bit more juice than James Conner and Benny Snell had. And so I think this is a great Steeler to add to the mix along with Pat Freiermuth. And Pat Freiermuth, I think, is going to be clearly the best tight end they've had since Heath Miller. Freiermuth needs to get a little bit better as a blocker, but there's still some meat on the bone there for him to improve. But he's a good pass catcher. And then another guy that I really liked for them was Kendrick Green. Center who can move and get out in front and help them as a pull blocker. I think he's going to be the answer to Marquise Pouncey as a rookie in the third round.
You know, it's funny you talked about the Steelers drafted Steelers. I think that's really important. The guys that they drafted, particularly at the top of the board, they fit the profile. Hard-nosed, rugged, blue-collar players that come to work with little fanfare. Najee Harris certainly does that. Pat Freiermuth also does that from Penn State. These are two guys that should be very important as they are key contributors right out the gate.
Chase Daniel, Caleb Haney.
No.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah.
To the Browns. We all like the Browns draft.
Yeah, so the Browns draft, the thing that I really love the most about the Browns is their second round pick. But let's stick with the first one right now. And you got to have a corner. I mean, they need a corner over there in the worst way. And Greg Newsome was one of my favorites in the draft process. He's competitive. He can play quarters. He can play cover three. He loves to fire downhill with his instincts and go get the ball. He's got ball hawking tendencies. And that's one of the reasons I love him. But, this is the guy that really gets me excited in the second round. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. How he slipped to this point, I don't know. Maybe he's hurt a little bit by the idea that Isaiah Simmons was slow to come around, but this hybrid player I think is going to be a much better fit much more quickly. He can rush the passer. He can cover off the slot. He's aggressive and has tremendous range on the field. I think they got a really, really impactful rookie, a guy with a chance, I think, an outside chance of being Rookie of the Year as a second-round pick, similar to what happened with Darius Leonard when he was drafted by the Colts.
Man. I do like what the Browns are doing. They have really upgraded their talent and personnel. This is a team that has gone from being the laughingstock to a legitimate Super Bowl contender. The players that they got, blue-collar players, and getting JOK where they were able to get them. I just like where they're trending. Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski are doing a great job of really building this team into a title contender.
Yeah, and you see Anthony Schwartz there, one of the fastest players in the draft, and think about how he fits into all those pass catchers as well. My goodness, what a haul they posted. Craig Krenzel, Matt Barkley. All right, let's get to
How's that possible? How's it possible,
it's impossible, but somehow it was possible. Snap grades presented by Verizon. Let's go. Get us started. Ravens.
Yeah, Rashad Bateman, fits a need. I'm not as big on him as some others. I thought they were swinging on some guys like Brandon Stevens and Jason Owe who have a ton of talent, but they're still developmental prospects. So I thought they took some chances here. Big Ben Cleveland, another one. Great traits, but just okay for me.
Bucky, let's do the Giants.
Hey, how about the G-men getting a playmaker? They have been missing someone that can really put the ball in the paint. Kadarius Toney gives them something they've been lacking since OBJ departed. I just like the pick. I like some of the other players that did it. And by the way, David Gettleman maneuvering up and down the draft board, something that he typically doesn't do, so he gets a B for the effort.
Lance, let's stay in New York, but shift to the Jets.
Great job by Joe Douglas here. They add their quarterback that they believe in Zach Wilson, but I think what they did beyond that, moving up in the first round to get Elijah Vera-Tucker on the offensive line, grabbing Elijah Moore where they did in the second round, and then getting Michael Carter, running back from North Carolina, in the fourth round. Really, really good first four picks.
And Bucky, I know you like what the Vikings did.
I did like what the Vikings did, but I feel like Lance has been in my grading book because I issued out an A. And normally Lance is the only one to give A's. Kellen Mond gives them a developmental quarterback that they can build around. Won't necessarily challenge Kirk Cousins right away, but down the line, I think this guy could have a chance to be a starter in this league.
Now, that's funny. You give an A, and we got to go to Lance, giving a team an A+. He can't be outdone with the Broncos.
I'd like to raise and go A+. I'm all in. I'm all in on this Broncos draft. They let the draft come to them, and Patrick Surtain was a guy they tried to keep quiet that they wanted. I love him, one of the best defensive players in the draft. But what they did in the second round with Javonte Williams and then third round with Quinn Miners, I think must be stated. These guys are all longtime starters. They killed their draft.
All right, Bucky, let's bring it back to reality. The Saints.
Yeah, the Saints. I'm going to try and do like Lance. I'm just going to throw my grading papers from the top of the steps, and wherever it lands, that's what the grade is. The Saints get a C because they didn't make it all the way to the floor. So I just didn't necessarily like some of the picks. I'm okay with Pete Werner, but Peyton Turner to me is questionable. And Ian Book in the fourth round. What are we going to do with him? Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston? I don't know. Little dicey for me when it comes to grading the Saints.
There you go. Hence the C. That was Snap Grades presented by Verizon. So we've gone through the teams. How about individuals? When we return, we're going to share each of our favorite picks, individual picks in the draft. That'll be next. It's Draft Today, Draft Grades presented by Verizon. All right, let's get to Best Picks presented by Microsoft Teams, our favorite individual selection of the entire 2021 draft. Bucky, get us started.
I'm going to go to Dallas Cowboys taking Micah Parsons because this was a pick that I don't know if many of us imagined would actually happen, but they needed a difference maker on the second level after watching them really struggle on defense a year ago. Micah Parsons is the difference maker. I would contend he's a top 5 talent. He's the best defender in the draft. When you watch him blitz, man, you see him wreck shop from the second level. He is someone that the Cowboys needed. He's a difference maker and really what I call a culture changer in terms of the way that he plays.
No doubt. The Cowboys always love the freaks, and I think Micah Parsons, multiple freak list participant for our friend Bruce Feldman there. I'm going to shift and I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball, I should say, and go with the Tennessee Titans. I like that they took a swing on Caleb Farley. I think, both you and Lance, had it not been for those 2 back surgeries, and look, that's a big deal, right? On the outside of 2020, this is a top 5 talent probably in the draft. It's some of the most fun tape to watch, man. This guy is lightning fast. He's big. And they took a swing on Jeffrey Simmons, and it worked out, right? With the ACL and with some character questions, Simmons has been an impact player for them, so why not do it again? They desperately needed help in the secondary. Love that they're willing to take that shot at Caleb Farley, because if it pans out, man, this is a top 5 talent taken 22nd overall.
Where you bet on your doctors as well, that they know what they're doing and that they believe that if he comes back, then he is. Yeah, you've had a guy who could lock up the rest of the division potentially as a man-cover corner. I'm going to go with, here's another swing for the fences. I'm going to go with Trey Lance. This was my favorite pick. This is the play-action pass of the picks. It looks like one thing, Mac Jones, and it ends up being another, a shot down the field. This is a get-the-chip pick. You're going to trade 3 first-rounders. You're going to take 3 first-round selections and try to make it happen with Trey Lance. Well, good, because if you hit it, you don't need those other 2 first-rounders because you've got a pretty good roster as it is. You got close with Matt Ryan into Kyle Shanahan did, getting to a Super Bowl W. Jimmy Garoppolo, you were just a hair away from getting a Super Bowl there. And now he said, you know what? I need the chip. Let me go get a quarterback with even more athletic ability and potential talent than those 2 guys in Trey Lance. It may not work out, but I love the swing here.
I like the swing for the fences. Trey Lance is really an intriguing prospect. Gives them a chance to maybe have the quarterback that eventually becomes the best in the division. More upside as an athlete and playmaker, plus a high IQ player. Nice fit in this offense.
I almost wonder if we're giving them a higher grade because we thought it was going to be Mac Jones for so long, right? And when it's like, oh, okay, it's not Mac Jones. There weren't 3 firsts traded for Mac Jones. Nothing against Mac Jones, who we think is going to be a good quarterback, but I wonder if we're giving him just a slight, maybe it's an A-, it becomes an A kind of thing. That was Best Picks presented by Microsoft Teams, and when we return, final takeaways, our final thoughts on what was a unique 2021 NFL draft. We'll do it when we return here on Draft Today Draft Grades presented by Verizon. You want to know when your favorite team is taking the field in 2021 or when this weekend's draft picks are going to make their debuts? You can find out in just a few days. The NFL is going to release its 2021 schedule. The whole thing going to be revealed on Wednesday, May 12th in primetime, 8 p.m. Eastern on NFL Network and ESPN2. Well, Bucky, Lance, let's wrap it, huh? Let's put a cap on the draft presented by New Era. Your final takeaway, Bucky, from what we just watched last 3 days.
Look, man, we always talk about the NFL being a quarterback-driven league. This draft certainly put that into place. We saw 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. We saw a ton of them go in the first 3 rounds, 8. And so everyone is trying to find that next quarterback, the guy that can get them over the top. It came out. We'll see how many of these guys end up being stars. Really talented.
Yeah, for me, Money, it was about, look, I saw a league that basically said, we got to get offense. And Bucky talked about quarterbacks. How about the small, speedy wide receivers in the first 60 picks? How about 2 first-round running backs? How about 15 offensive linemen in the first 2 rounds? Offense rules the roost, and that's what this draft showed.
Now, I'll just quickly say what a difference a year makes. You know, we did this show last year. We didn't know if we were going to have a season. We didn't know if we were going to have a preseason. We didn't know if we were going to have a 16-game season, right? And then here we are in Cleveland these last 3 days. People are in the streets. We got fully vaccinated draft rooms every time we throw to them. Man, just kudos to the NFL for the last 12 months and what they were able to pull off in the midst of this pandemic and where we stand today. So thanks to all of you that helped contribute to that. Thanks to all of you that watched as well. Excited to look back on what was the most unique draft likely in NFL history, considering what we've been through the last 12 months. Thanks for watching Draft Today Draft Grades, presented by Verizon.